A magnetic rail line cuts through ancient stone arches. Commuters in tailored tunics read digital scrolls on their way to the Forum. In the streets below, a cosmopolitan population from Britannia to Egypt conducts international commerce using modernized Latin. It requires us to imagine what the modern world would look like if the greatest superpower in antiquity had survived its own collapse. Exploring an unbroken 2,000-year Roman timeline challenges our basic assumptions about how human civilization actually progresses. By the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire was a landscape of shattered columns and failing infrastructure. The Roman economy relied entirely on agriculture and territorial expansion. The state extracted wealth from conquered lands to feed its cities, but by late antiquity, the borders had reached their absolute geographic limits. The empire was also trapped beneath a biological energy ceiling. Every field was plowed, every road was built, and every forge was heated using only the muscle of humans and animals, or the burning of local forests. Because elites had access to a massive, inexpensive supply of enslaved laborers, they had zero financial incentive to develop labor-saving machinery. When mass migrations and border incursions began pushing deep into Roman territory, the military found itself fighting on multiple fronts with a shrinking tax base. The state's highly centralized systems were exhausted. Lacking the political flexibility or the energy resources to adapt, the Western administration fractured under the pressure. To keep the empire alive, the timeline must diverge in the late 4th century. A capable, reforming emperor seizes power and stabilizes the state. His first act is military. He purges the legions of unreliable foreign mercenaries and centralizes the defense force to aggressively secure the existing borders. With expansion halted, the economy is forced inward. The steady influx of war captives dries up, cutting off the supply of slave labor and requiring the empire to maximize its domestic production. Facing severe labor shortages, the Roman state suddenly has an urgent, survival-level need to build machines to replace human muscle. The blueprint for industrialization already existed. In the 1st century, a Greek engineer named Hero had invented the aeolipile, a primitive spinning steam engine. State-sponsored academies could scale that ancient curiosity, hooking it to simple gears to power massive grain mills. Administrators could rapidly deploy these engines along paved Roman roads and aqueducts, integrating the Mediterranean into an industrial supply chain. Centuries later, the geopolitical map looks completely unrecognizable. With Rome occupying the entirety of Europe and the Mediterranean, maritime powers like the British and Spanish empires never emerged to colonize the globe. There is no United Nations consisting of dozens of competing nations engaged in complex diplomacy. Global governance operates through a single, unified imperial defense structure controlled from a central capital. Under a single global hegemon, the industrial-scale bloodbaths of the 20th century simply do not happen. The massive human mobilizations and complex global alliances required for a world war have no rival superpowers to fight. The result is a pax machina, a highly interconnected, technologically advanced, and entirely monolithic global society operating without serious external competition. 2,000 years of uninterrupted peace and an unbroken chain of human knowledge presents a compelling vision of the future, but it ignores the tension between imperial stability and disruptive progress. History shows that the scientific revolution and the industrial revolution were not the products of massive, stable empires. They emerged specifically because centralized authority had collapsed. This visual model shows a unified bloc fracturing into smaller jurisdictions. Following the fall of Rome, European states were forced into aggressive, close-quarters competition for merchants, resources, and intellectual talent. That constant rivalry created a market where inventors could move across borders to find the best conditions. The decline of widespread slavery caused labor scarcity, driving up wages and creating a strict economic demand for technological innovation. Rome's sprawling, rigid bureaucracy existed to collect taxes and maintain order. That continuous stability actively suffocates the kind of chaotic, decentralized experimentation necessary for rapid advancement. An eternal Rome would likely be authoritarian, highly stratified, and deeply resistant to change, lacking the dynamic diversity that defines modern history. The collapse of the Western Roman Empire was a brutal rupture, breaking a stagnant equilibrium that had trapped human development for centuries. The ensuing era actively dismantled the large aristocratic estates, the heavy reliance on slave labor, and the suffocating imperial bureaucracy that had actively blocked industrialization. The technological momentum required to split the atom, map the human genome, and leave the planet required centuries of intense competition between sovereign nations. Humanity's highest achievements did not arise from the endurance of its mightiest empire. They required that empire to fall, leaving behind the ruins needed to build something entirely new.